Fando and Lis, or Fando y Lis, is the directorial debut of Alejandro Jodorowsky, a director that I really admire and I would really like to see his full filmography. Fando and Lis being his debut is a really interesting starting point for the enigmatic director, and it's a pretty uncompromising film. This isn't exactly an easy watch. The film is set in a weird post-apocalyptic world where Fando and his partially paralyzed fiancée Lis are in search of a magical city and an oasis called Tar, and no, not that one. Along the way, the couple run into weird groups of people, and the film feels very stringed together without much cohesion. The film is based on the memories Jodorowsky had of a play by the surrealist Fernando Arrabal. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, that last name right, but going into the film without a script, it does kind of show that. The film feels pretty much like everything is left open to the viewer's interpretations as you bounce around from scene to scene, wandering this wasteland like the characters. Each set piece you could dig some kind of deeper meaning out of it, kind of really dig into its symbolism, but I don't really think it compounds into anything like cement for the film as a whole. Each section feels more like vignettes that are strung together by the journey and the main characters, which is very loosely tied together, which did make the runtime feel much longer than it really should have. Sure, it could be a fun watch to watch the film with a buddy where you guys kind of just sit back and pick apart the interpretations you both have from moment to moment, but that symbolism doesn't feel as grandiose as something like The Holy Mountain, which is a film I'd really need to rewatch, or Santa Sangre, where the symbolism there kind of adds to the characters in the world and the spirit of the film. Here, the symbolism feels kind of like the main dish rather than the secret ingredient. There are some really striking visuals throughout the entire film. You can really see where Jodorowsky's visual flair and production shines, as it's easily the strongest aspect of the film. There's so many cool shots that would make for great posters throughout the entire film, but all of that is just kind of backed up by some really bad and cheap sound design that was constantly distracting. I understand that this was a pretty low budget film, but I've always heard that audio can make or break a film, and it's definitely a big distraction here. The performances are fine, but there's not much for them to kind of work with, as there really isn't much to perform besides some of the theatrics that are more or less here to bulk up the visuals. Ultimately, so far, this is probably my least favorite Jodorowsky film that I've seen, but I haven't seen too many of them yet. I would definitely be down to watch this film again for a third time. My second watch I did with the director's commentary, which was a lot of fun, but I think I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. And funny enough, this is kind of the least I have to say about a Jodorowsky film I've seen. Attached to this DVD, though, was a documentary in 1994 called La Constellation Jodorowsky, and it was honestly super disappointing. The film sets up to explore the life and art of Jodorowsky, but quickly feels like it kind of gets lost in anecdotes and a speaking event where Jodorowsky performs an exercise. After watching the documentary, I honestly felt like I didn't really learn anything new that Jodorowsky's Dune didn't really cover, which that movie also had much better visuals. Definitely would recommend Jodorowsky's Dune over this. The entire documentary feels like the most basic point-and-shoot camera setup, which is kind of odd to capture one of the most visually interesting filmmakers of all time. The film really meanders and feels like it's bulked up for runtime, but when I checked out the director's commentary for Fando and Lis, I was surprised to not only learn about Fando and Lis, but also about Jodorowsky in a much more entertaining and informational way than the documentary presented. And it's also pretty much packed with the exact same information that the documentary presents, minus this weird art performance exercise that he does throughout majority of the runtime of this documentary that's just cut out of there, which I thought was the worst part of the documentary. To me personally, the director's commentary for Fando and Lis honestly just replaces the need for La Constellation Jodorowsky completely. It's a nice bonus to have on disc, sure, but I'm never going to watch this documentary again, nor would I really recommend it. I'd recommend just the audio commentary or Jodorowsky's Dune. So I'm going to give La Constellation Jodorowsky a 5 out of 10. I'm much closer to a 4, but I guess like if you really wanted to, like, it does kind of serve some kind of purpose for Jodorowsky, I guess. I don't know. It's closer to a 4 than a 6, but a 5 out of 10. Bye.